At a packed staff meeting, my manager threw his arm around me and announced, "This one's like a cockroach. No matter how much pressure we throw, she just won't quit." Everyone roared as I stood there frozen. I smiled, nodded, and waited. 2 weeks later, I walked into the same meeting room as his replacement, ready to conduct his exit interview. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who would stay at a company for 6 years. Especially not one like this. We're based in Springfield, Missouri. Mid-sized logistics company. Nothing flashy. Not a lot of turnover in the lower levels, but managers seem to come and go every year or so. I worked my way up from the bottom. I started as a temp in the warehouse, moved into inventory, then scheduling, then eventually into operations. I didn't go to college, but I learned fast. I was dependable, the kind of person they called when things went wrong. Over time, I became the one everyone came to for answers. I never asked for a title or a raise. I just wanted to work and go home. That made me easy to overlook, but also hard to get rid of. Then Brett showed up. He was our new operations manager. I remember his first day. He walked in like he owned the place. Hair slicked back, some overcompensating cologne, loud voice, blue pinstripe suit. He shook hands like it was a sales pitch. At first, he was friendly, smiled at everyone, laughed at every joke, even brought donuts one day. But I could tell it was fake. Then the tone shifted. The first time I saw the real Brett was during a meeting with the logistics team. We were going over a backlog issue, something to do with a vendor delay. He asked what caused the bottleneck, and I explained the vendor's paperwork was incomplete and had stalled customs. He interrupted and said, "That's not it. We just have poor communication in this building." I said calmly, "We've been tracking this issue for 2 weeks. I've got the reports if you want to see." He waved me off. "It's fine. I'll handle it." He never did. And the issue dragged out for another month. From that point on, he started undermining me, subtly at first. He'd forget to invite me to meetings I'd always been part of. Assign tasks to people with no experience, then blame me when things fell through. He questioned every decision I made in front of others, but took my advice behind closed doors. He made me feel invisible, but somehow still responsible for every mistake. Then it started getting personal. He commented on my clothes once, said I dressed like an assistant manager at a Walgreens. Another time, I was leading a training session for a new hire and he walked by and said, "Careful, she might actually teach you something useful." Every time I pushed back, he'd smile like it was all a joke. "Relax," he'd say. "You're tough, right?" I started keeping a folder on my home computer. I labeled it insurance. I filled it with screenshots, emails, notes from meetings, anything that showed a pattern. I didn't know what I was going to do with it yet. I just knew I needed it. Then came the staff meeting. Friday afternoon. Full team. Maybe 30 people in the room. HR was there, the regional VP, even 2 reps from corporate who were visiting that week. Everyone was packed in. Brett stood at the front like usual. Big fake smile. Tossing little comments to the crowd like he was hosting a game show. Then he said, "Let's get our own little miracle worker up here." He looked right at me. I hesitated. I didn't like being put on the spot, but I walked up anyway. Everyone was watching. Brett threw his arm around my shoulder and leaned into the mic. "This one," he said, "is like a cockroach. No matter how much pressure we throw at her, she just won't quit." The room erupted. Laughter. Not polite, awkward laughter. Real belly laughs from some of them. Others looked down. A few glanced at me like they weren't sure if they should laugh or not. I just stood there, frozen. I didn't say a word. I didn't move. I looked around a room, smiled, nodded once, and sat down. I don't even remember the rest of the meeting. All I remember is the feeling in my chest, tight, like my ribs were squeezing my lungs. I've been called worse, sure. But not like that. Not in front of that many people. And not by someone in charge. It wasn't just disrespect. It was public humiliation. But I didn't cry. I didn't go to HR. I went home and sent an email to a contact I hadn't spoken to in months. Her name was Jen. She used to work in marketing. We weren't close, but she was sharp, and we'd vented a few times at company happy hours. She'd left the company the year before after filing a quiet complaint against someone in leadership. She told me once, after a couple drinks, about a private whistleblower program the company had rolled out after a discrimination case. It didn't go through local HR. It went straight to legal, handled externally. That night, I emailed her. "Hey, do you still have the contact for that reporting program you mentioned?" She replied within the hour. I filed a report that night. 27 attachments, 6 recordings, a detailed timeline, witness names, screenshots, even a few videos. Then I waited. 1 week passed. Then I got a call from a woman named Angela. She introduced herself as part of the internal legal team. She said she'd reviewed my report and asked if I could meet off-site. We met at a coffee shop near the highway. She wore a plain gray suit, no expression. She didn't ask me to repeat anything. She just confirmed details. She told me she'd be in touch soon and that I had done the right thing. The next Friday was the Cockroach incident. At that point, I knew I didn't need to do anything else. I already set the fuse. I came in the following Monday like it was a normal day. Brett avoided me, which was new. He was quieter. He didn't strut around like he usually did. A few people whispered more than they talked. On Wednesday, 2 HR reps from corporate showed up. By lunch, Brett's office door was closed. By 2:15 p.m., they walked him out. No warning. No speech. Just 2 reps with blank faces and Brett looking like he'd been hit with a baseball bat. He didn't say a word. Everyone just stood there, pretending to work while watching him through the glass. He looked over at me on his way out. I didn't smile. After Brett was gone, the office was quiet. Not peaceful, just tense. Like everyone was waiting for the other shoe to drop. Nobody knew exactly why he was fired. Rumors started flying almost immediately. Some people thought he got caught skimming the budget. Others thought he was having an affair with someone from the vendor side. A few people joked that he probably just pissed off the wrong person. They had no idea it was me. I didn't say anything. I kept my head down and did my job. That week, HR scheduled climate check, interviews with everyone in the department. They wanted to hear what people had experienced under Brett's management. They brought in consultants, held group sessions. It was chaos behind the scenes. Then, something unexpected happened. On Friday, I got called into the regional VP's office. Her name was Monica. She'd been with the company for years, always polite but distant. I figured it was another interview, but it wasn't.
She offered me the job. Brett's job.
Interim, she said, but with a real path to permanent. I was stunned.
I didn't expect that.
I thought they'd bring someone in from corporate or at least make one of the assistant managers step up. But she said, "You've kept this place running for years without the title."
We just didn't realize it until now.
I told her I'd think about it. That night, I didn't sleep. Part of me wanted to take it right away. I'd earned it. I had put in the time, handled the pressure, dealt with all the crap. But I also knew what came with that title: politics, scrutiny, expectations. And I didn't trust that just because Brett was gone, the rot was gone too. The next morning I said yes, but with conditions. I told them I wanted 2 toxic supervisors reassigned, a third-party audit of the department, and a guaranteed review of the company's harassment policies. I didn't ask for a raise. Not yet. I wanted them to prove they were serious. They agreed. Word spread fast. Some people were happy, genuinely relieved. A few came up to me and thanked me for surviving. That's the word they used. Surviving. But not everyone was on my side. There was this one guy, Paul, assistant logistics manager. He was close with Brett. Used to laugh at all his jokes, follow him around like a lapdog. I could tell he was pissed about the shift in power. 2 days after I started as interim manager, Paul cornered me in the break room, closed the door behind him. He leaned in and said, "You think you're safe now, huh? You think you're going to turn this place into your little fiefdom?" I didn't even blink. I said, "You should be careful about how you talk to your manager." He laughed. "You're not my manager. You're a temp with a clipboard." I reported the incident to HR the same hour. But they brushed it off, said it was just a misunderstanding.
I saw what was happening.
Brett was gone, but people like Paul weren't. And they didn't like seeing someone like me, someone without a degree, someone who started in the warehouse, rise to a position of real power. They weren't going to come at me directly. They were going to wait,
Watch.
look for mistakes, and try to pull me down one piece at a time. I made a new folder. I started logging everything again. Paul started slipping. He'd disappear for hours. Blamed it on vendor calls that no one could confirm. Started talking to junior employees in ways that crossed the line, rude, condescending, sometimes just plain creepy. I documented it all. I had no plans to use it. Not yet. But I wasn't going to be caught off guard again. Then came the audit. The third-party audit I requested was more thorough than I expected. They interviewed everyone, looked through emails, reviewed old performance reports. And when they published the first round of findings, people panicked. Turns out Brett had faked more than just one budget report. He'd been manipulating quarterly metrics, over-reporting fulfillment numbers, even hiding complaints filed against him and his buddies, including Paul. I wasn't surprised, but the corporate office was. They sent a full oversight team. 3 suits, laptops, and long faces. They took over Brett's old office and started running forensic accounting checks. People got quiet again. Suddenly, the same people who laughed at Brett's cockroach joke were stopping by my office asking how they could help. I didn't forget who they were. I kept things professional, but I didn't offer second chances. One afternoon, I was reviewing some of Brett's old files, and I found something I wasn't expecting, a series of emails between Brett and a third-party logistics vendor. It looked like he was funneling work to them in exchange for kickbacks, gift cards, hotel stays, one time even a trip to Vegas. I turned it in. 2 days later, corporate launched an internal ethics investigation. Quietly, the walls were closing in, and the people who used to walk around with all the power were suddenly scrambling. And Paul? He made one last mistake. He called a junior team member a slur during a night shift meeting. Said it out loud. Thought nobody would report it. But they did.
To me.
With witnesses. And a recording. I didn't even wait. I walked straight to HR, dropped the flash drive on the desk, and said, "Handle this. Or I go back to corporate legal."
Paul was gone by the end of the week.
After Paul got fired, things calmed down for a little while. People started showing up to work on time. There was less whispering, fewer sarcastic remarks. Productivity actually went up. But I didn't relax. I knew the danger wasn't just loud people like Brett or creepy guys like Paul. The real danger was the quiet ones, the ones who smiled to your face and took notes behind your back. And that's exactly what started happening. 3 weeks into the new era, I noticed something strange. A woman from accounting, Jessica, started hanging around our department more than usual. She'd never spoken to me much before, but now she'd linger in meetings, ask casual questions, say things like, "You're doing such a great job, especially after all that drama." It didn't feel like a compliment. One afternoon, I caught her watching me from the conference room. She ducked her head down when I looked. I asked around. Quietly. Turns out Jessica was close with one of the regional VPs.
Her sister-in-law, actually.
She wasn't just nosy, she was taking notes. Someone higher up didn't like that I'd been promoted, or maybe they thought I was getting too much support. I was a threat. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was survival. So I played the game. I kept my head down in meetings. Let other people talk more. Gave credit out loud to other departments. I let them think I was harmless. Meanwhile, I kept collecting data. I reviewed all my emails, rewrote every policy I touched, documented everything I delegated. Then, just as I was settling into that routine, something else happened. I got an anonymous email. No subject line. No signature. Just one sentence and 2 attachments. It said, "Brett was protected, and you're not done yet." The attachments? One was an old email from Brett to someone in corporate, Monica, the same regional VP who offered me the job. He was thanking her for shielding him during that HR mess with the warehouse girl. The other was a spreadsheet with red-flagged payment entries. Going back 3 years. Double invoices. Overbilling. A couple vendor names I didn't recognize. I sat there staring at the screen. Heart pounding. Brett was protected. And Monica knew. That's when it hit me. His firing wasn't just because of what I reported. It was because he got sloppy. And once he became a liability, they cut him loose. But they never meant to fix anything. They just needed to shut the noise down. I printed the email and stuck it in a sealed folder. I made copies. Sent one to my personal cloud, one to a locked external drive. Then I started doing my own digging. I traced two of the vendor names. They were real companies, but both were tied to the same P.O. box in St. Louis. One of them had a contact name I recognized from a brief dinner years ago during a regional summit. It was Monica's cousin. Now I understood why Jessica was watching me. I wasn't the only one who'd been keeping records. Monica was trying to get ahead of something. And if I pushed too hard, I was going to be next. So I waited. 2 weeks later, we had our quarterly strategy session. All department heads were required to present. Jessica was there. Monica was leading. I acted normal. Gave a clean, professional report. Thanked everyone for the improvements. Took zero credit for any of it. Then, at the very end, Monica asked if anyone had questions or suggestions for more transparent systems going forward. I looked her right in the eyes. I said, "Actually, I do." I pulled out a folder. A simple one. Thin. Nothing major. Just enough to shake the room. Inside was a breakdown of duplicate vendor payments under Brett's leadership. No suggestions. Just raw data. Highlighted trends. I handed out copies. Not dramatic. Not emotional. Just numbers. I said, "I think we need a deeper review of third-party contracts. I'd like to work with corporate compliance to get ahead of anything we might have missed." Monica smiled, tight and forced. "That won't be necessary," she said. "I've already scheduled something similar." But her eyes? They didn't match her voice. That night, I got another anonymous email. This time it had a spreadsheet and a list of names, including Monica's. Someone was helping me, and I was about to find out who. The second anonymous email changed everything. It had a list of vendors, dates, dollar amounts, and initials next to each entry. At the bottom was one name I hadn't seen in months. L. Grant. That was the head of internal audits, quiet guy, based out of the Chicago office. I only met him once at a training event years ago. He barely said 2 words back then. I looked up his contact info. Still worked for corporate. Still on the internal audit team. That's when I realized it was him. He was the one sending me the anonymous tips. I took a risk and emailed him directly. "I want to help clean this up, but I need to know I'm not walking into a trap." He called me that night. Not from his work number. Not even from a personal one. He used a burner. He said, "You didn't just blow the whistle on Brett. You shook loose something bigger. The vendor scam's been running for years. Monica's not just involved. She's at the center." I asked him why he was helping me. He said, "Because they buried one of my reports 5 years ago."
Got me reassigned.
But I kept copies. You're the first person who didn't get scared and run. The next few weeks were tense. I acted normal. Took meetings. Signed off on reports. Smiled in the hallway. But underneath it, I was working with Grant every night, feeding him documents, matching records, pointing out patterns only I would have seen from inside. He said it was all going into a sealed corporate case, top legal, board level. Then, one morning in April, I walked into the office and saw 3 black SUVs in the parking lot. Federal vehicles. Internal affairs, external auditors, legal. They walked straight into Monica's office. Didn't even knock. She came out 15 minutes later in handcuffs. It was quiet. Nobody said a word. Jessica tried to slip out the back. They stopped her in the hallway. Later we found out Monica and her family had set up dummy vendors. Overcharged the company for years. Some contracts were fake. Others were tied to real work, but with padded hours and services never delivered. Brett was just a pawn. So was Paul. But Monica? She built the system. The board fired her that same day. She's facing state and federal charges now. Fraud, embezzlement, wire stuff. All serious. Jessica lost her job too. She was helping cover it all, feeding them intel about people who might get suspicious. But here's the twist I didn't expect. They offered me Monica's job. Regional VP. Full package. Big salary. Company car. Sign-on bonus. I said no. Because somewhere along the way, I realized something. I didn't want to become what I had just destroyed. I didn't want to sit in some office hundreds of miles away, making decisions I'd never feel the impact of. I wanted peace. I wanted to go home at a normal time, cook my dinner, watch bad TV, and forget about office politics. So I stepped down. Not in disgrace. Not in defeat. I picked my own replacement, a woman named Carla who'd worked in operations for 10 years. Quiet, smart, kind, unshakable. She'd been overlooked forever. People like Monica never even learned her name. Carla knew the business better than anyone. She had a spine and a heart. I trained her for 3 weeks, handed over everything I'd built, and told her to trust her gut. Then I cleaned out my office. The same office Brett used to sit in. The one I was humiliated in. Before I left, I wrote a short note and taped it inside the top drawer of the desk. It said, "If anyone tries to put their arm around you and call you a cockroach, fire them first." I still get emails from old coworkers sometimes, telling me how things are different now, how they feel safe, how Carla pushed for better leave policies, better training, better everything. As for me, I took a job at a smaller firm. Less money, less pressure. Same field, but now I work with people who value work more than power. I go home before dark. I sleep better. But I'll never forget that day in the meeting room. The laughter. The heat in my face. The way it burned. And I'll never forget the look on Brett's face when he realized it was me who pulled the string. They all thought I was the cockroach. But I wasn't crawling. I was climbing. And I came back with fire.